Excuse, what are they think are they really doing there?
This is the Caroni bird sanctuary. All I can't come here and hunt like this. Like all if I get to have a hunting van. This is ridiculous. I'll have to arrest you.
Let me take a little bribe now. Let me let them off with a warning.
But wait. Well, didn't give me a chance to explain myself. I didn't know that you can't hunt here. What made this place so special?
This is a place protected by Ramsar.
Ramsar? Who the hell is Ramsar? He here?
Ramsar. The Ramsar Convention is an agreement we signed to protect this wetland in the form of in-situ conservation.
What is in-situ conservation? In-situ conservation, which is the protection of endangered or vulnerable animals within their natural environment by creating protected areas where laws and legislation should be upheld.
Oh, you mean like the zoo?
Well, something like that. The zoo is ex-situ conservation, where you protect the animals off-site, away from their natural environment.
I don't really understand these fancy words in it. Break it down for me now.
Well, the Caroni Bird Sanctuary is a natural habitat for plants and animals, especially those that are vulnerable. This type of conservation is cheap, as there's little change to the environment by man. It also protects a larger number of species, each with a diverse and stable role contributing to the ecosystem. Living in the natural environment allows the wildlife to better cope with changing conditions and better adapt to adverse conditions.
And the zoo is an establishment which maintains a collection of animals for conservation, for research, as well as for public display. And this type of conservation could protect vulnerable species from going extinct forever. So these people can help you get a better understanding of the concept of in-situ and ex-situ conservation.
The flora and fauna, particularly the flora, is one of our most important assets. Plants are very, very important in the production of energy for all life forms. So it is very, very important we understand that and protect our environment.
Well, all creatures are interrelated. We are all part of, if you want to think of the world as one big ecosystem, or we are all individual members in many different ecosystems. So protecting flora and fauna in Trinidad and Tobago benefits all of us in the short, medium and long term.
In the Caroni swamp, the scarlet ibis is considered the species for protection. Some of the examples of species that will need some attention, and this is because their population is not very big, are rails and creeks and jacanas and gallinules. With the saltwater intrusion due to the breaking down of the embankment, the grassy vegetation all disappeared, and those species, their numbers have dwindled to very, very small amounts.
Well, right now we have one critically endangered species, that's the hawksbill turtle. We have one endangered species, that's the green sea turtle. And we have technically two species that are considered to be environmentally sensitive. We have ocelots and we have the red howler monkey.
Well, what we do on our tours is that we have a lecture. The lectures that we do sensitize people of how interesting Caroni Swamp is, how important it is, why it needs to be protected, and why the species in here needs to be protected.
Our mission statement, I should say, is to promote wildlife conservation through education, rehabilitation and propagation. The propagation part of it is self-explanatory. We breed animals for release back into the wild, and we've been doing that successfully for the last 4 years. We have done turtles, snakes, iguanas, possums, tarantulas. We breed for deliberate release.
The greatest challenge we have is environmental degradation. So habitat loss is one of the main contenders. Although in Caroni Swamp we have a patrol unit that is a section of the forestry division, and they're supposed to have patrols in here every day. We don't see that kind of dedication.
I suppose our biggest challenge would be making the habitats as natural as possible and providing enrichment. It's very important to the development of the animal, especially if it's an orphan that we are rehabilitating. We would want things to be as natural and normal as possible, and we find challenges, particularly, for instance, rehabilitating raptors as birds of prey, where we now have the responsibility of the parent. We have to teach them how to hunt live mice before we release them.
If you are game warden and your duty is to patrol the swamp, by all means come out every day and execute your program. One of the greatest forms of protection really is developing a friendly relationship with people who use the area.
We are on a lot of blogs with other rehabbers that have been doing this for decades around the world. We attend conferences at least twice a year that have to do with wildlife rehabilitation, where we meet vets and other rehabbers that we can, pull knowledge from. We get training in how to do it. There are little methods that you can use with pipes and teaching the bird how to see when the mouse, pops his head up at a certain point in the pipes or between leaves. There's loads of stuff that can be done, but training and knowledge, especially from compatriots, is invaluable.
Well, there are laws existing in Trinidad. However, laws by itself cannot stand on its 2 feet. The most important thing after you create law is enforcement, and we have very little enforcement. Look, for instance, at the hunting law. This year, the minister took it upon himself to ban the hunting. And in a statement, a very broad statement, he said he was going to use the police to enforce this. Yet, you've never heard of anybody being apprehended, but you've heard stories of continuous hunting in remote areas of Trinidad. So what is the point?
Directly, no. There are none. We recently went from a draft wildlife policy in Trinidad in 2013. We went out to public consultation, and it is now, as of December 19, 2014, a national wildlife policy. But the national wildlife policy, unfortunately, does not address rehabilitation at all, even though we were there at all of the consultations and we did give opinions. But indirectly, the laws do protect, because there are only certain animals which are listed in our Conservation of Wildlife Act that are allowed to be hunted as wild game. But it's very difficult because we don't have sufficient game wardens and patrols, and it's very difficult to enforce those laws.
Of course, we don't need to put animals in zoo. That is a very wrong thing to do, because what you do is you take away from that animal its instinct to forage in the wild. You take away from that animal its liberty to roam the forest freely, and you take away from that animal the kind of nutrient it would have gotten for itself, rather than you feed it a pound of beef in the morning and a pound of beef in the afternoon for survival. So that is not the answer.
It is effective because we are getting a lot done, and if it's done properly, it can have a tremendous benefit, especially when you consider the other option to not doing it ex-situ will be not doing it at all. We do also, for the record, practice in-situ conservation. There are times when animals, orphans or injured, well, not necessarily injured, but orphan animals do come to our attention from members of the public and so on. And as long as the animal is not injured, we encourage and we guide every step of the way for the animal to be left where it is found and simply monitored, or perhaps fed a little bit with guidance, depending on what kind of creature it is or how old it is. And the parents usually just take it, and it has a happy ending.
I find ex-situ conservation rather expensive. All that time and resources to put it into one place. Suppose it had a natural disaster, disease, all them animals get dead.
For real, and when these animals are released into the wild,
Where will they find food? Where will they find protection? All they know about is this artificial environment.
At least they have a better chance of breeding, plus they're safe from hunters, predators, probably even extinction. And they're not so safe in in-situ conservation, the authorities not even doing their job. Plus, it is take up real space.
But in-situ conservation is better because more animals are protected in a larger area. It is cheaper.
Yeah, that's true, and they're living in a natural environment, so they're learning from their fellow brethren. You understand?
I'm glad I'll get some insight when no barber passing here.
It's a Hannah meeting jail.